Hello, everyone. I am Corey Andrew Powell, and I am joined today by Zee Clarke, a Harvard MBA and author of Black People Breathe on Penguin Random House Books. Now, Zee went from leading teams at Fortune 500 companies and startups in Silicon Valley to teaching mindfulness and breathwork and racial healing for Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. Now, Zee has been featured in CNBC, Essence, and more. So, Zee, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. We're happy to have you here and excited too. And I thought just to sort of lay a foundation for the conversation, two terms we might just want to bring our listeners and watchers to familiarity with. So you do have these two terms that are part of your practice, one being, of course, mindfulness. So beginning with that one, if you were to describe the word mindfulness or us living more in a more mindful way, what does that look like exactly?
Well, my definition of mindfulness is paying attention in the present moment without judgment and paying attention on purpose. Now, what does that mean? Okay, that means paying attention to how I'm feeling, how is my body feeling, how physically, emotionally, mentally, inside and around. That is mindfulness. It's paying attention right now, not being in the past, not being in the future, right? We're always like, what if this happens? Or I can't believe that person did that. Mindfulness is paying attention right now in the present moment.
Wow, that's amazing. It's funny because it reminds me of I just had a conversation with Dr. Corey Yeager, who I really love, and we talked about people getting stuck in the past. And he said, "Here's a simple thing to think of: you have no control over what happened 10 minutes ago. Like literally, it's done." So,
Yes.
and so if you just think about that on a bigger scale, all you can do now is maybe somewhat control what's
Mm-hmm.
coming, but even that you don't know. So all you really
Yeah.
have is this moment of now. So it's
Yes.
yeah, that's a really, really, really great one. And then the next term, of course, is more of the actual physical thing that you do, which is breath work. So explain a little bit about what breath work is and its role in our wellness.
Well, breath work, right? Let's just start with breath. It's breathing. And you might be like, yeah, we breathe all the time. Ain't no thing. What's your point? It's breathing with intention. It is breathing on purpose. And there are different breathing exercises that one can do based on how you're feeling. I mean, even the simple take a deep breath, everybody's heard that. Take a deep breath, right? There is a reason that we take a deep breath because it allows our nervous system to calm down. And so there are different versions of this deep breath. And sometimes it's fast and sometimes it's slow, depending on what you're trying to achieve and what problem you're trying to solve. So that is breath work. It is breathing intentionally. And there's specific breathing patterns that can influence your nervous system, how you feel emotionally, and how you feel physically.
Wow, yeah, and I saw one of the exercises. Now I was in the gym, so I couldn't do it because I didn't want to be, what I'm talking about with the hands. I
I
didn't want to, I
oh,
didn't want
that
to,
one, oh, that one.
that one. But that, and I don't. But luckily, I'm in a great career situation, so I'm not. I don't need to go like run to my boss at this time to say, hey, I'm not happy. I'm very happy, so I don't have to do that one. But that was an exercise that specifically we can talk about that one. It was regarding like being able to have the courage or the 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 strength, if you will, emotionally to go and ask for something you want. Right. So just that one exercise. Talk a little bit about that one, if you don't
Yes.
mind.
Okay. Let's start with why this exercise is needed. Self-doubt. Now, I have to tell you that as the only Black person, sometimes the only woman in the room, Black person, Black woman in the room in corporate America, especially as I rose in the ranks, that was really stressful, and I felt like people were judging me all the time. I felt like my bar for performance was way higher. A lot of Black people will say we got to work twice as hard just to be treated equally. And so perfectionism, needing to be perfect all the time, that causes a lot of stress. And that caused me to have a lot of self-doubt, specifically around using my voice. And nobody believes me, but I was a really shy child. I was scared to talk. And now I'm talking all the time, right? But that's because of this breathing exercise. So I have a breathing exercise that is specifically to build your confidence when you need to use your voice, to build up the courage to either express your opinion or ask for something. And in my case, in corporate America, it was asking for promotions and raises, asking to be put on special projects, because while my colleagues that don't look like me, that are of a different ethnicity and perhaps a different gender, they get tapped on the shoulder. But I didn't get tapped on the shoulder. So I would have to use my voice. Or if I'm about to present, right? And especially as you get more senior, presenting in front of the board, for example, right? And so I'm like the Black girl and the young, I was always younger than everybody else in the senior ranks. And to get up there with the confidence. And so this breathing exercise is called the lion's breath. And you were talking about how you couldn't do it at the gym because it's like a little embarrassing. Many breathing exercises I invite people to do in the privacy of the bathroom or the closet or something, because nobody needs to know that you have these secret tricks, right? They don't need to know, but you do them in private and you go in there. So the way the lion's breath works is you take a deep inhalation through your nose, and then you exhale and stick your tongue out like this, like making this sound. And yes, I do it with my arms up too. But basically, it's animalistic. It allows you to bring out that inner lion, which is inside of all of us, no matter how shy you are, no matter the insecurities that you might have, no matter what happened in the past when somebody criticized you, for example, no matter what you're worried about in the future. It's about being present, doing that breathing technique and channeling your inner lion so that you can be the voice that you want to be and get what you want.
Yeah, that's such a great point because I know I've talked to women. So you just raised 2 points there. One is that you were younger, you are a woman, and a woman of color. So you have these 3 isms that are sort of
Yes.
potentially you're being subject to: ageism, sexism, and
Mm,
maybe not racism, but bias, or and maybe racism. It could be that as well. And so very often I think what I want from society is
mhm.
these conversations to happen so that people who don't look like us
Yeah.
understand
Mm,
what we are going through. It's not as if we're asking for anyone to do anything special for us. We just want to
mhm.
be given the same opportunities. And I think that is what's
Yes.
getting lost when you have these people across different parts of the country who don't want to talk about the history of systemic racism in this
Mm,
country. And if
yes.
you don't do that, today's little white kids aren't going to understand why XYZ has been happening. So it's a
Yes.
disservice to everyone. I mean, do you feel that that's like a disservice to society as a whole if we don't have these conversations?
I completely agree with you that it is a disservice to society, because if we do not discuss the issues, we cannot learn from them. And especially our children and future generations, right?
Mhm.
There was a TikTok or Instagram video where there were these little white boys, maybe like age 3 and 5. And the 5-year-old was explaining to the 3-year-old like what happens to black people. And the 3-year-old goes, "Are we black?" And the 5-year-old brother says, "No." And he goes, "Phew." The
Yeah,
5-year-old
yeah,
said, "Phew."
yeah.
Right? So this is this such innocence. He didn't, but he was just his innocent, youthful self was just observing and being like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is the way some people get treated. This is the way
Right.
other people get treated. I'm glad I'm not in that other group."
Yeah, it didn't sound very appealing when when he was given the description of how those groups can be treated. No, absolutely.
Yes.
And also thinking on the reciprocal, just to keep that balance, I've seen these wonderful experiments where they've used dolls and little girls,
Mm.
and it goes both
Mhm.
ways where um, sometimes the little black girl will gravitate towards the white doll because she has been
Oh,
programmed to think that the black doll
yes.
is ugly.
Yes.
But you also have these situations where the parents have been really strong and positive influence and positive projection of black beauty onto their children. So they go right
Mm.
for the black doll named Kenya. They go right.
Yeah.
And so I think at the end of the day, what the lesson for me is that grown-ups are the ones really who have to be very, very careful with the programming of the kids,
Yes. I
right?
completely agree with that. And also that then defines what blackness might mean to someone. I have a chapter in my book, Black People Breathe, that's called "You're Not Really Black." Because
Mm.
many, many times in my life, I have been told that,
Yeah.
because of the way that I speak, because of my education. And I had to really sit down with myself and say, what does being Black mean to me, right? And even
Hmm.
my hair, I got natural hair right now, but I didn't know
Yeah.
what this looked like till I was 35 years old. And that's because
You were
I just,
relaxing?
yes, I did
I
all
know.
sorts of the relaxers. And that causes
Hmm.
cancer. Now it
We
shows that
know,
it causes
yeah.
uterine cancer.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, I read about that, cervical issues and all kinds of stuff. And even with that, it's interesting because I've had a conversation recently, well, I would call it more of a debate, a spirited
Hmm.
debate, regarding what that's even being, kind with how this conversation went. But it was about why those texturizers for African American people even existed. Someone said something like, well, is it fair that you guys are wearing blonde hair when that's something that, that's what white people have naturally, or something really bizarre, the conversation. And I had to just nicely educate him on like all these attempts for black women to straighten their hair and color their hair to be more blonde. It's deeply rooted in the attempt to assimilate to people who we thought don't like us. So we thought if we look more like them, and that's why you have all the 1950s with Nat King Cole with hair that looks like ice cream because he's burned his scalp up with lye just to get it straight. I mean, that's a history point that I think is an interesting point to tell non-black people so they get it, right?
Yes.
I think it's important for us to have that conversation.
Yes, I agree with you. And let's talk about the consequences of not assimilating, right? And
Mm.
this is the question that we all have to face, right? Is to, I even have a chapter on my book called To Code Switch or Not to Code Switch.
Yes,
But
yes.
let's talk about hair right quick
Mm-hmm.
because the Crown Act did not pass.
Did not pass. Did not pass.
Did
And well,
not
let's
pass.
stop and talk about what that is so people know. So explain what the Crown Act
The
was or is.
Crown Act, if it were to have passed, it would have made it illegal to discriminate against us because of our hair, particularly when we have natural hair or we have braids, right? Yes, both of us right now, it is currently
Just our hair.
legal to discriminate against you and I because of our hair. Let's talk about the economic consequences of that. All right. I started my career in financial services in New York City a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you what year. And in that time, it was not okay to have natural hair in the workplace, and I just wouldn't have gotten hired.
Mm,
So these, the biases, right, as a result of the systemic, this is systemic racism. It is currently okay. Like this
mm,
Crown Act did not pass, and that has an impact not only on our ability to get jobs, but our ability to generate wealth, maintain wealth. And then if you think about owning property, and I have so many friends. I lived in San Francisco for a long time, and I had many friends that did not look like me, whose parents paid the down payment for their houses that they bought.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah.
Now, I don't have that. And most black people that I know, I mean, there are a couple, but most of us we don't have that because of the systemic racism. So it
Right.
all ties together of I'm straightening my hair, which causes cancer, so that I can get a job because the system is currently set up in a way that that's just the only way to survive. And that is why we all need to breathe.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I mean, just the anxiety of that alone, the anxiety of just how you explained it is enough to make someone like, like I think I stopped the breathing actually when you were when you were explaining all that
Mm,
because I think people don't realize the tie-in.
yeah.
And that's why I say it's so important, if you look at situations like how there's this time in American history where black families were systemically denied loans for housing. And of course, that's tied to the generational wealth that we don't have for
Yes.
decades, which you just mentioned. And I just think, all we're trying to do is tell society, listen, you need to understand that there's a pattern that created the situation we're in today. But with that said, I do want to talk about your actual book, which is Black People
Mm,
Breathe. So I see
mhm.
clearly some of the nuances as to what I think is the reason why you wrote it. But in your words, why did you write this
Mm.
book?
I was not okay. I was emotion. I had chronic stress. I had burnout. And what ended up happening, I was in Silicon Valley, rising up the ranks, success. My resume looks like success. And I was not okay. And burnout is real. And that's why I had to leave the country and I went to India. And I joked that I did the Black girl version of Eat, Pray, Love because I was meditating, I was doing yoga, and I had never felt so good in my life. And I was like, Black people need this. Okay, let's start with the physical health problems caused by racism, right? We have higher rates of high blood pressure. We have higher rates of heart disease. And now medical research shows that this is a direct result of discrimination and racism. Not only that, racism and microaggressions, those smaller things that were unintentional, right? Those cause us chronic stress, which again leads to the high blood pressure, but other things like diabetes, obesity, a weakened immune system, anxiety, depression, we are suffering. This is death by a thousand cuts, right? You see people get shot by the police, which is very disturbing. But people, what doesn't make the news is that these little things that happen every day are killing us slowly. And so I wrote this book so that Black people would have the tools that I learned in India on how to feel better, how to have agency. They cannot take away our joy. They cannot take away our peace nor our health. So for Black people and all people of color, I wanted us to have these tools. And also, why am I the only Black person in these yoga classes and these meditation places? Right. So I also wanted company. No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then for allies, because a lot of friends of mine that are, allies, they're like, well, is this book for me? And I'm like, look, this book was not written for you. However, this book could be a really powerful educational experience for you. One, it gives you an inside glimpse of what happens to Black people in America. And every chapter is something that happens to us. Shopping while Black, The Only, RESPECT at work, bearing witness to the assault on Black lives. That's not my name. Wait, that's not my name. Okay, so many times in my life. And so it will educate people on what happens, because I have a lot of white friends that say that would never happen to a Black person like you. And they don't realize I don't have Harvard on my forehead when I walk into a store or when the police stops me. And then these tools that I share for Black people, everybody can use, because everybody experiences stress, fatigue, self doubt. Now, the causes of your issues might be different, right? You might not get followed around a store, but you still might be frustrated because something else in your life. And when you are calmer, when you are in a better place, you're going to treat other people better. You can be a better ally by reading this book and using these practices also.
Oh, I love that because one of the things I learned as I got older was not to be reactionary when people would project their what they thought were bias or their racially tinged opinions of me, because I had gotten comfortable with who I was, my abilities and my skills and what I was accomplishing in the world. So I felt accomplished at that point. And so there was not like no one was going to like diminish me because of the N word. Like it's just not going to happen because because I'm better than that and I know that. But it's hard to get to that place. And to your point, you only get there when you are comfortable with self, know your value, know your worth. And I think actually a lot of Black men who are in those situations with law enforcement when it ends tragically, I think if they learn that, it could actually change how they interact with the police. Not putting the responsibility on them, but I think when you're more aware and you're calmer in those situations, you can navigate a little better how to not let things escalate when they're trying to perhaps, or you're perhaps being provoked. And I think that could be, a tool that we could implement for our Black men.
Yes.
But just a thought.
I I agree with you, and it's not just Black women, it's Black men, it's also Black women, because a lot of that we don't get a lot of the press on what happens to Black women with police, but similar things happen. And in
Mm.
my book Black People Breathe, I share a story in the Shopping While Black chapter of when a grocery store employee called the police and said that I stole deli meat. Okay, I'm a vegan. Okay, let's start there. I'm a vegan.
Let's start with that.
So the police were called and they came, sirens and all, and they searched my car. I showed the receipt. I showed $220 of groceries that I had purchased. And we went through each item. I explained because they were like, what's this? And I was
Oh my
like, that's an
gosh.
English cucumber? What's this? I was like, portobello? And
So they're
what
getting
I
like a
really
culinary lesson as well while you're teaching them some culinary trick. Yeah.
exactly. And I just wanted to cuss them out. I just
Mm.
wanted to be like, you dumb, insert words here that I won't say right now. But instead, I took some deep breaths, and particularly the belly breath has been most powerful for me when I'm triggered. It's when you inhale and you expand your belly as big as possible. And then inhale, want to do it with me? And then when you exhale, your belly comes towards your spine.
Ruined by the phone, of course. That
Ah!
wonderful breathe, and a scam spam call on top of it. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Wait, one
see,
more
and
time.
see,
Okay, we'll do it again.
you might be triggered by that. And so unless you're like, damn, you take a deep breath, inhale in, belly expands, and then as you exhale, belly comes towards your spine. And then, this is counterintuitive because we are taught to suck it in, got to look skinny. But in fact, it's when you inhale, you stick that belly out big. And
Yes, yes,
that,
yes.
yes, that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system, that is our fight, flight, or freeze. That's like,
Mm.
this cop is about to kill me. You know what I
Well,
mean? Or
yeah,
at work, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then our brains aren't thinking clearly. Then we're in panic mode. Then we might say something or do something that might get us killed or at least put in jail or bad things,
Mm-hmm.
bad
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
And that
No, that's
belly breath.
important.
Mm,
Yeah, that's important. Just stopping for a moment and processing what's happening versus being reactionary has definitely
yes.
changed my life for the better because I used to be really, quick triggered and, as you are
Mm,
many times when you're young and you just, you don't know who you are yet. So everything annoys you and you respond to everything. But when you get older, as I said, and you start to kind of you're more grounded in who you are, what you want to
mhm.
accomplish, you sort of, in my case, I deem all those things as barriers to my success if I let them win.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're not throwing me in jail for foolishness because I'm not going to participate in that to give you that opportunity. Or with people, you know, uh, confrontations. I like, well,
Mm,
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna let you have that, and I'm gonna walk
yes.
away because I want to go home at the end of the night to my partner and my mom. And that other stuff is,
Yes.
all those things it could not end well if you're reactionary. So I want everyone to know breathing is key to survival,
I
right?
you asked me at the very beginning of this what the definition of mindfulness is. And so let me give you an example of practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is paying attention to how you're feeling. So you are in a moment, like that moment when the cop pulls you over and they make you wait and you're sitting
Mm,
there just like, "Oh my
so
god, oh my god,
frustrating.
oh my god,"
Right,
right?
right, right.
So mindfulness in that moment is recognizing how you're feeling and naming the emotion. I am experiencing fear. I am experiencing anxiety, right? By naming the emotion, it allows you to have a separation between you
Mm,
and that emotion. You are not the anger. You are not the fear. This is something that is just happening and it's temporary. And that mere acknowledgement can allow you to be a witness to what's happening rather than being swept up in it and
yeah.
then decide what you want to do, how you want to deal with it, right? Because you
Hmm.
are not swept up in that really challenging emotion. That is
Yeah.
mindfulness.
No, that's amazing. And I think that, one of the most important things that you talked about earlier, just a few minutes ago, was these are lessons, of course, and your book specifies how they impact Black people, but there are
Mm,
universal lessons there. And I loved one
yes,
video I watched of yours where you talked about what we all know the glass ceiling,
yes,
but but for people of color, there's a
mm,
term called the concrete ceiling,
yes,
because you've already been predetermined not to get there because of how you look, and people should
mm,
understand that is an actual thing that people of color deal with
yeah,
because of inherent bias that is a real
mm-hmm,
thing. Um, but at the same time, I love that you still say to keep going for your dreams, and you have these exercises that
yes.
can help you get there. My favorite one, well, I think, well, two that I love. I'm sure you have a lot more, but I loved doing the acronym of breathe. I did that
Mm,
one. I did that one at the gym actually, and I was on the treadmill like with my eyes closed, like walking, like just But it's an acronym you have for the word breathe. So if we can talk about that particular exercise and not give it away because we're going to give the link so people can go to that YouTube video and see it. But it's an acronym for a breathing exercise called Breathe. And can we go through what each letter stands for?
I do have an acronym called Breathe, and it is particularly for why the angry Black woman needs to breathe, right? So this, right? And it's because things happen to us, right? And so the B is for angry. It's okay to be angry. Be angry, right? Because you need to feel the feelings. If you suppress them, if you sweep them under the rug, they're just going to build up over time. And then we have chronic stress. We then get diseases, right? Disease is dis-ease, right? Which then causes things like cancer, okay? The the R, release the anger with your breath. And I teach a breathing technique called breath of fire, which allows you to get that energy out of your body, right? Because if we hold on to it, right, that is not going to be good for us. Nelson Mandela has a quote that says, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping that your enemy dies, right? So we're angry. The person we're angry at doesn't care about us,
They're
right?
going
They're
on with
not.
their lives and yeah.
Right? Okay. The E in breathe is elevate your heart rate. Okay. And what does that mean? It means exercise, run in place. I like to dance. In fact, one of my exercises in my book is conscious dance release. I just put a timer on, put on some music. And when you just, it went, because they say the issues are in the tissues. The issues are in the tissues. Something happens and you feel it in your stomach or like, that thing in your throat, right? And so elevating your heart rate allows you to just get that stuff out, to move it. The A is assess and act. All right, once you've released that anger, once your nervous system is good, right? Then it's like, okay, what's the situation and what should I do? So that you're assessing that from a more rational place. And the T is treat yourself. Treat yourself. That is an exercise in my book. And I do not mean go shopping, though. If that's what's good for you, you should do that, right? What I mean is what makes you feel good. I have an exercise called, well, it's like this. I feel restored when. When do you feel restored? Is it when you're talking to your friends? Is it when you're alone, right? Some people are different. Is it when you're going for a walk outside? Is it when you are taking a bubble bath and you light some candles? Is it that chocolate? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that you feel good and do that? So T is for treat yourself and H is for heal. Heal. Like, what is nurturing to you? And I'm a sound healer with Tibetan singing bowls. A lot of people are like, Zee has lost her mind. Because I've literally, all my business school people, Harvard Business School, they're like, what happened to Zee? But I'll say there are many restorative practices. There's restorative yoga, right? There's, you might have heard of the nap ministry and the nap bishop of just like, take a nap, just relax.
Which is big. That's a big one. Yeah.
Yes. And I encourage people to do sound baths. So I'm a sound healer with Tibetan singing bowls. There are these bowls, these big metal bowls made of 7 metals, made by hand by Tibetan monks who were praying and chanting prayers of healing as they made them for hours. And these bowls, like these gongs, and it just puts you into a peaceful state. I was like, I didn't even know this existed, this state of just bliss.
It sounds gorgeous. I know. I'm like, wait, where am I going to get some bowls from? I need me some bowls.
Yes, I do a monthly virtual one online.
Okay, I'm gonna have to hook. I'm coming.
You can find it on my website. H is for heal.
Zee Clarke, Harvard MBA and author of Black People Breathe. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and I'm going to be following you and breathing a lot more with you in the future.
Yes, I love it. So nice to spend time with you today and keep on breathing.